Wednesday. And anytime I see information on Fox News making this interview possible, I see information about maybe things that are hidden in the food you don't know about. I always try to get those guests on, and we were able to do that today. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the program a medical expert and author of the book called Sugar Rehab. His name is Dr. Gerald Edelman, and we're going to talk a little bit about some maybe hidden sugar, or as it's praised here, hidden sugar bombs. Dr. Edelman, good morning, and welcome to At Your Service.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me on this morning.
No problem. I got to ask you before we get into the topic, the book Sugar Rehab, what is that all about?
My website is sugarrehabbook.com, and my book is Sugar Rehab. It's easy to download from that site, and there's a lot of nice educational videos I have on my site. It is basically about this, Scott. Number one, the biggest problem in the United States related to obesity is sugar, and it's mostly the hidden sugar in our foods that you and I are going to talk about hopefully today. But what's happening is we're getting bombarded with sugar, and that wreaks havoc with our body chemistry, and it makes us overeat, and it leads to obesity and a bunch of disease. The reason why it's called Sugar Rehab is because sugar is addictive, and it's been shown in animal studies. And it's pretty well generally accepted now that sugar is a chemical that's basically addictive to the brain.
So this is important, and we've talked on a couple of the programs I mentioned a moment ago. We talk about sugar and really talk about having everything in balance. I mean, we're made to have a balanced diet. So I think what I hear you saying is that it's, you know, if you know what you're putting in your body, it's one thing, but sometimes you may be putting your body out of balance by things you think that are healthy, and that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I have an interesting statement, I think, to make. Let me quiz you, Scott.
Okay.
Out of all the ingredients that you've read on all these packaged foods, what do you think is the one ingredient that's actually scientifically proven to cause disease?
It's proven to cause disease. Well, would sugar be it, maybe?
Yeah, sugar.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah,
Even I got that one right.
Sugar is the one ingredient that, you know, directly causes high insulin and inflammatory states and then obesity, right? So in the United States, the biggest problem that we have is obesity, and I'm saying about 80% of that's attributable to sugar.
Well, and one of the ingredients, and I know a lot of people that have this, and I'm just going to read it right here. It says, if you think instant oatmeal is a healthy breakfast, despite its heart-healthy label, 2 packets of the stuff will put you over a day's recommended sugar. There's that much sugar in oatmeal?
Yeah, well, most of the oatmeal's on the market, so there's 2 things to say, right? So we live in a society where the word instant is kind of what we want, right?
Uh-huh.
And the problem is instant isn't good because it means that instant usually by itself has a bad sugar effect on you. But in addition to that, because oatmeal inherently doesn't taste that good, companies have to add a bunch of sugar. So I don't want people totaling up the amount of sugar per day because that's way too complicated. I just say in my book, you know, look at the sugars per serving. If it has more than 2 grams of sugar per serving, don't buy it. Most of these instant oatmeals have more than that, so they don't make our list.
And another one you mentioned was some types of yogurt as well, right?
Yeah, so this will blow your mind, right? So everybody's in, you know, urban myths are funny, right? So all of a sudden Greek yogurt is like the rage. It's supposed to be real healthy for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of sugar in a 24 fluid ounce Greek yogurt is 92 grams. Now put that in perspective. A sugar cube has 4 grams. So take 90 and divide it by 4, and that's the number of sugar cubes in that 24 ounce. Now, hey, people think something's healthy. They tend to eat a lot of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't unusual for people to eat, you know, 3/4 of that carton, if not all of it. That's a ton of sugar.
We're visiting with Dr. Gerald Edelman talking about sugar in foods and some of the numbers that have already, you know, that we've just thrown out here can certainly open your eyes. He's our guest on this segment of At Your Service with Scott McCauley. So, and we've had this discussion on some of our other shows today. Where does the balance come when you talk about sugar? Because we're talking about sugar in manufactured products. Yet there are natural products. There are even fruits that do have natural sugars in them. How do we distinguish between the two?
Well, my book is meant to teach people how to think. And basically I'm trying to make it simple. So it's a 0 and 1, the way a computer is.
Okay.
It's an either or. So for your question about sugars, I lump all, quote, natural, end quote, sugars together.
Mm-hmm.
They all cause insulin spikes and bad health effects. That would include brown sugar, honey, agave, you name it, right?
Okay.
And I've got another thing you might find true. If it looks healthy, it probably isn't, because they're packaging and marketing to us to make us think it's healthy, and then they're piling sugar in the. And it doesn't matter if it's pure sugar or not; it's still going to have the same chemical effect on your body.
You know what's interesting, and I read this on the note too, that a lot of in the past, I know if you were a baseball player, for example, and that's the example I'll use, that if you were playing a doubleheader, you might grab a something to drink and a candy bar in between games, and then you go back to it. And then, of course, now you get some other natural bars, including power bars that are aged. But you said, the note I read here says that you might be better off eating some candy bars than some power bars. Is that true?
Yeah, again, that fits into if it looks healthy, it probably isn't, because if you look at the sugar in power bars, a lot of times it has more sugar than a Snicker bar. They're both not healthy, as we've been talking about, but the power bars, they're a trick. They're a marketing trick, and that's what I want your listeners to understand. And I kind of outline in Sugar Rehab, some of the tricks they're playing on us, and I try to simply create lists, that people can eat off of, and then they don't have to think any further than that.
And so basically, as we begin to conclude here, Dr. Edelman, what you're saying is that we've always talked about having the balanced diet and doing these things and having the proper amounts of food, but really, and with your list, it certainly will help, but we just have to be kind of a little proactive, I guess would be the best way, and being aggressive, and don't just look at the labeling, but look at what the labeling says, or don't look at the packaging, maybe that's the better term, and really look and see what's in there and read on the label so you know what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, and I want your listeners to focus on the sugars per serving, because, again, the only thing that's been proven to cause disease is sugar. So remember simplification. Look at the sugars. Don't buy anything with more than 2 grams of sugar per serving. The book will outline that for you. I've done the work for you, but that's the principle. And so, again, if it looks healthy, it probably isn't because of the sugars. So that's what I want folks looking at on the ingredients.
And Dr. Edelman, where's your website again?
So it's called sugarrehabbook.com. That's all one word, so there's going to be 2 B's and 2 R's in it. I think your listeners will find it interesting and educational.
Well, and we appreciate you giving us some information and giving us a little bit of insight. And again, we've talked about on some of our other shows already about this, but give us some insight to kind of back up what we've been hearing from some of our other folks as well about being cautious about what you see and what you're eating foods, because it couldn't be, you may be getting something you don't think you're getting, and that's always good advice. Dr. Edelman, thank you very much for joining us. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Scott.
You betcha.
Good day.
Bye-bye.